Well, the IPCC is a very interesting body, and I was very privileged to be involved right at the beginning of the IPCC in 1988 when it was formed. And I became chairman of the scientific working group, which was looking after the science. And that was a very big challenge because the point was not just to find a few experts, you see, and get them together in order to try to write a report. We had to think of the whole world because this is a world problem, a problem that affects everybody in the world. And therefore we had to try and involve people from all countries and all disciplines involved, and have really rather a big project. And it got bigger as we went along. I was the chairman for the first three of these reports. In 1990 the first one came out, and then 1995 the second, and then 2001, about 5 years in between those two. But to get the first underway, we first of all said, well, how many countries can we get involved? How many scientists can we get together? And we succeeded in getting together quite a lot, actually, of that first instance. And we produced our first report in 1990, a report which the Prime Minister of my country, Margaret Thatcher at that time, was very interested. And indeed, I presented that report to her cabinet just as the report came out, because our final meeting occurred in the UK. So that was, she did a lot to publicise it. She was very supportive of it. And she gave me a lot of money, actually, to build up the computing in the Met Office so that we could do much better computing in order to see whether this thing was really going to happen or not in that way. The biggest problems was, of course, getting people to agree, nations to agree, governments to agree that we were talking sense and that they should take some notice. And that entailed us having to make sure that as we were writing the reports, it wasn't just a bunch of scientists collected together writing them. We also had to get other scientists to look at it. We had to get the reports reviewed by a peer review process, and also by a review process which involved governments. And then the final fling had occurred right at the end of the process, when we'd written a summary as scientists of what the report was saying. And that summary had to be put in front of an intergovernmental meeting, 100 countries typically present, simultaneous translation into 6 languages or so, very United Nations style. But it was not a political meeting, it was strictly scientific. All the discussion had to be scientific. All the questions or the worries about the report must be about how is it clear enough? Does it say it well enough? Will people understand it? And things like that. It was not about policy at all, or was not supposed to be, although of course there were some governments that were very concerned about policy. And wanted to get the report as weak as possible in some cases, or other governments were keen to get it as strong as possible. So we had an interesting time. But in the end, we managed to get all governments to agree on a summary. We went through it sentence by sentence, and it took an awful long time. We were working well into the night of these various meetings we had, and so we had something which governments really could say that it belonged to them. In fact, the delegates could go back to their ministers and say, Minister, here's the report from the IPCC. We've all agreed this word for word, so it's our report. It was a government report. It wasn't just written by scientists, it was approved by governments, and that really was a very important part of that whole process. Yes, well, I think the great achievement of the IPCC is that we've actually been able to carry out careful scientific assessment of a wide range of the science that's involved, and come to some conclusions with a fair amount of certainty in their simple form. Although there's a great deal we don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty about exactly how big the changes will be and exactly where they will be and all that sort of thing. We've been able to come to conclusions which make it clear, I think, that we really have to take action and we really have to be careful for the future. And we've had a window into the future which we must not ignore. So it was very rewarding in many ways because we were having a wonderful scientific time. That's why people put work into the IPCC. Scientists love belonging to it because they learnt so much. We all learnt so much from each other. And this whole process of learning and understanding was, I suppose, the really rewarding part of it from the personal point of view. But realising that we were able to make some sense of what was actually going on in the climate. And not complete sense, of course, because we didn't understand all about it at all. More questions were asked, and some questions just asked more. And that's the nature of science, to go on all the time and to be involved in a process on this scale and of this depth and with this importance was really marvellous.